Welcome to the Young Canucks. We're back after a short hiatus of 6 months, and we thought we would come back with a story we've done in the past. We looked at the bubbling Toronto market 6 months ago. To this date, it has not yet bubbled.
Nope.
I wonder why not. Perhaps the media isn't looking at the right things when they're covering the story, or they're just really not sure what's going on. Either way, the Toronto Star recently did a story titled Shortage of New Listings Fueling Desperation Among Toronto Home Buyers. We've seen an increase in the average sale price year over year. We're seeing that in both houses and the condo market. And the newspaper is also reporting that many veteran realtors are surprised that prices did not drop. The Toronto Star gave a pretty weird, simple reason for why this is the case. They mentioned that there is a low number of new listings and that there are low interest rates. Well, first of all, the interest rates have been the same for 5 years. And the fact that there are a low number of new listings, I'm not sure what they're trying to get across with that. They should be looking more at why there are a low number of listings. And my colleague Anya will be going over that in a minute. I just wanted to mention one thing that I've noticed, not under this article, but under other postings. I see a lot of users commentating that as soon as the interest rates go up, the Toronto housing market is going to crash. It's going to be an apocalypse. And that's what the media was covering 6 months ago. And I wanted to go over some specific numbers to look at this fact. We mentioned in our first video that banks are fairly cautious in giving out mortgages. To look at this in perspective, a bank typically will give a mortgage of up to 35% of someone's income or family income, which means that if interest rates were to double, so if they went from 3 to 6%, which is a pretty big jump, that you would be looking at roughly 50% of someone's income just to cover the mortgage, which is pretty substantial, but probably still livable. As soon as you see a threefold increase in interest rates, so from 3% to 9%, you'll be looking at somewhere around 70% of the income now, at which point we might be seeing people not be able to cover their mortgages due to other expenses. And there we might have some issue for people who took out the maximum mortgage that they could. All right, and so now Anya will be taking a look at one of the reasons we believe that there is very high demand right now for housing, and that is in the CHMC, which is an insurance policy. If you wouldn't mind also briefly describing what the CHMC is.
Yeah, CHMC stands for Canada Housing and Mortgage Corporation, and basically what they say is if you don't put at least 20% down into the mortgage, then harsh penalties will apply, and they have the right to basically dictate what those penalties are. They're in the form of fees. Essentially, it's a couple $1,000s if you're shy of the 20. If you're around the 15% mark, if that's all you got down, then they'll charge an even higher penalty. It's a higher amount of money. And if you're closer to the only 10% or less, they can be quite harsh. And recently, CHMC announced that the penalties will actually be even higher. So as of May 1st, the CHMC will go up. The fees will be, if you're still around the 15% mark, they're not as bad. It's a 0.5% increase. But for some of the higher risk mortgages, so like around 10% or less, the penalties are going up quite a bit. So I think that is also fueling the demand for houses. People who don't have 20% down, they definitely want to get into the market and buy something right now and close the house within the next 60 days in order to avoid that high penalty.
And some of these people have probably been waiting for housing prices to drop.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, they've seen the prices go up, and now they're seeing fees associated with getting mortgages go up. So it makes sense that now all of a sudden they want to buy.
Yeah, I think a lot of realtors kind of had their clients sitting on the bench waiting for that decrease in prices, which never occurred, which is, something that we talked about 6 months ago. That
Yes.
people shouldn't really hold their breath for that because there's really quite no good reasons as to why prices would drop. Um, but definitely it's nice to see, and it's something we also mentioned in the article that the Canadian banking system and mortgage system is really putting more healthy safety checks in place to make sure that people don't walk away from their mortgages. Because if they're discouraging people from putting little money down, then that means people will be now putting more capital into the mortgage, and they're less likely to walk away from that mortgage for any reason. They'll tighten their belt in other areas, but rather than lose that 20%, because when house prices are in this half a million range right now in Toronto, that's quite a lot of money that they would have to walk away from at 20% down. So they're not likely to do that. 20%, you're looking at least over $100,000. So that's a lot of money. People, and that's a nice thing to see. Again, Canada stepping up to protect the mortgage market, to make sure that people are qualified, as you said, the 35% of making sure that they meet those targets, those margins, and with the CHMC hikes, that's really good to see as well.
Ultimately, what's happening today is what was happening 5 years ago. The people who are getting mortgages are going to be able to pay for them.
It's really, yeah, that's the point. The article also mentioned something about the condo market. It seemed a little bit of an afterthought in the article, but it did say that there isn't such a frenzy demand in the condo market. That supply and demand are more stable. There isn't crazy buyers willing to do, bidding wars and multiple offer situations. The article mentioned that that's not really happening in the condo market yet. The prices there have gone up quite nicely, 5% year over year, regardless of the most stable demand situation.
Which is
And
quite amazing if you consider the fact of how many projects there are in Toronto currently being built. I think Rob Ford recently said there's something like 50 cranes up right now, which sounds about right. It's incredible how much product is going up right now in Toronto.
Yeah, and the road conditions and climate conditions haven't really been there for people to go out and shop for homes, let alone condos. So despite the fact there's peak sales up 12.5%, so that's a good strong indicator the condo market is very healthy. And because there isn't such a frenzy and yet they're seeing such good figures, you might even I might even argue that the condo market may be healthier than the low-rise house market right now, because they're seeing strong figures despite the fact that such a frenzy isn't there in place.
I
To
can't
fuel it.
imagine that'll be the case going into the future, though, just because the supply is so low for new homes now. There won't be a lot of new homes going up in Toronto for prices to be going down in that market.
Yeah, I mean, that's something you can argue. Will there be an overabundance of condos on the market in the near future? It's possible, but looking at immigration and looking at demand overall, I think we will still see stable. We'll see a stable condo market, and the fact that it's doing well now, despite the fact that it doesn't have as favorable conditions as the low rise, I think it means that the condo market's probably strong enough to survive an oversupply situation.
Okay.
Mm. I was reading the article, and I love the Toronto Star because they do this from time to time. They have these little real estate market pieces. But as I was reading it, I noticed that some of the realtors are actually even concerned about this new buyer demand frenzy. And that just didn't make sense to me at first because, if there's so many buyers out there willing to buy and they're going crazy and they're just willing to snap up anything, I would think that the realtors would be happy, but it's not the case. Did you notice that they mentioned that the realtors were actually concerned about this increase in demand for homes?
Yeah, I was wondering about that. I automatically assumed more sales means great for the real estate industry and for agents. So why do you think that an agent would be concerned in such a market?
Well, I see this in my sales office all the time. When there's a shortage of buyers, often agents think that when they come into the sales office and they promote that the market's really bad and there's no buyers around, and if you really want me to find you someone, a client, you're going to have to pay me an extra 1 or 2%. So when the market is ample and people looking for property, especially condo property, you agents really can't negotiate a better commission rate. So I think oftentimes the fact that the condo market and the real estate market is so strong, agents don't really have the negotiating power to negotiate their commission in an upward direction. I think that's one of the big things. Also, like when you have so many buyers and they're so eager to buy and they're going into that listing and they want to put that offer down, there's a possibility that that buyer will be willing to ditch their agent in order to secure the deal, secure the house of their dreams. That is a very distinct possibility, which means because oftentimes buyers will not sign a contract with the agent that's looking around for them. So it's very easy to walk away from an agent in order to secure the deal. If the seller doesn't have to pay the buyer agent, there may be a deal that could be made on that end in order to save the seller some money, and they would be more willing to look at an offer where another agent isn't involved. So a lot of agents get scared that they're going to be cut out of the deal in order to make it happen, which calls into question, do we still need agents, to make deals? It's sort of a valid sort of point to make.
That's true. An agent's primary role in the past has been to help buyers find that right property for the right price. But with today's technology, it's pretty easy. You go online and you find what you're looking for. So, what's the agent's primary role in today's market? Is it still to find properties, or what is their role in the future?
Exactly. And I think that's why you hear such concern in the article. It's like, oh, they're concerned that there's such a frenzy, and I think that's what's fueling it. That idea that agents are sort of becoming obsolete in this market. There's an agent's role is also to motivate a buyer, right? Get out there. We're gonna find you great property. It's gonna be great, rah rah, siskamba. But if the demand is already there, and then the technology for the buyer available to find the property of their dreams, as you mentioned, without the assistance of an agent, just really with the click of a button, yeah, it does call into question their role. And I think that's what this entire I think the entire article echoes that in a way. With the technology angle, certainly it does raise some concerns for the agents. I think they're scared that they're not going to be as useful in the future as they once had been.